Frankie,
Ian, you shirt changing son of a bitch.
same shirt. What are you talking about? I haven't
You
changed
took your
it.
jacket off.
Oh, Christ. What up, Paxson?
Hi, how's it going, guys?
Doing good,
Not only are you
man.
our second ever, you're our second and our third repeat guest.
Yes. We are
love it.
hanging
Thanks,
out with
guys.
Jeff Paxson today, Mr. 4.5%, top realtor in Indiana, and some books that largely he keeps, and just an all-around fantastic salesperson. And we are going to talk about common sales objections and how to overcome them, but we are going to do it in a March Madness format because we are recording this before the tournament has started. I've got my Purdue Boilermaker shirt on, number one overall seed in the East. By the time this airs, they will have no doubt choked and fallen apart long before they got to the Sweet 16. But I am still filled with hope and anxiety, as always, as the tournament starts. So, Jeff, just speaking from your career, you've been a realtor for 25 years?
20, 25, 22 years.
Yep, 22 years. So when you hear objections today, when you hear a customer object to something or throw up a roadblock, how are you different today than 22 years ago when you first started and you were a nervous young guy with no business?
I was I mean, like Tommy Boy, which was like, okay, thanks, and I would just kind of, they made their decision. I wasn't hardened enough to know that no might mean maybe. And so just through trial and error, and my coaches here on Let Me Speak to a Manager, Frank and Ian, I've learned some ways to reapproach. And so I think having some of these formal objections, being aware of them is a good tool to have as you move forward in your sales career.
It's interesting. I'm thinking back to when I first started in sales. It was just, I always felt like I was bothering people. And maybe it's because I was doing a lot of cold calling.
Sure.
So I was so fast to get off the phone because I felt like I was always intruding to be a salesperson. Like I was always interrupting people. So if you said, I'm not interested or call me back later, I was so happy to get off the phone just because I was uncomfortable. And that took me a while to just, I think the best thing I could ever do was hearing no so much in my first 4 or 5 months. I mean, like hundreds of no's, hundreds of objections, of which I just gladly accepted them, just like Tommy Boy running out of the room. I think it just kind of got me a little bit hardened to it, to where it, like anything, it wasn't novel anymore. So it didn't bother me. I took it personal for a while, and then you hear no enough, you just quit taking it personal and you get hungry and you're like, okay, well, I can't just listen and no all the time. What about you, Frankie? How are you different with when you hear objections today versus maybe even when you started your business, right? When you were kind of desperately trying to find ways to make revenue to pay off your debt.
So it's a few things with the sales process. I kind of understand it as a process now. Like being told no, or being given indifference, or being given misunderstandings or objections or whatever. Like you understand, like it can be turned into components pretty easily. And sales is really nothing that's all that special. It really isn't. There's just components to it. You need to understand each component. You need to know if you're misaligned with someone. You need to know if you're misaligned with what you're offering that someone. But you also need to understand most people want to be sold. And as a young person, I didn't really understand that. But I also had an inherent ability to sell since I was a little kid. Like I've made sports teams because I could sell when I was in like middle school and high school. I won sales competitions because I just wasn't afraid to do it. And I kind of liked the process of selling things to people. So I think what you learn in sales is there's a couple of different types of sales. The complete cold open sale is really hard. But if you have a warm lead, someone that you paid for advertising, that person reaches out to you, that's a different thing. So I think you have to understand
that person wants to be sold.
That's right.
That person wants to be. When you say most people want to be sold, someone getting a phone call during dinner at night does not want to be sold.
Correct.
You're talking about someone tapped on your website, someone asked you a question, called into your 800 number.
Responded to a piece of mail or yes. So I think you have to understand, where did the lead come from? What is the service that you offer? And you need to, sales really boils down to one really important thing. What can you do to help the other person on the line? How do you satisfy the customer? All of us are in sales. We are in sales when we were dating. We are in sales as businessmen. We are all in some level of sales. Every one of us. We're in sales with our kids. Like, the amount of times I have to sell one of my children before 8:30 in the morning is, I don't even know the number. So I have 4 and 2-year-olds. So it's like, it's nuts. So everyone is a salesman or woman.
So the way we're going to do this today, we've built a Sweet 16 bracket of 16 of the most common objections, and we're going to vote today on which ones are the most difficult. But as we go through them, we're going to share our takes on probably the best way to overcome some of these. So in the East bracket, the number one overall seed is, I had a bad experience with your company before. And that is up against, I already have someone else I buy from. So for Paxson, that would be, I already have another realtor I work with. And I had a bad experience with your company before. I can say on that one, the number one overall seed, you get that a lot in business to business, probably more than I saw with NVR, where it was consumer business. The odds of repeat business isn't as high. But at GE, like, how many times I had to hear, my washing machine is broke down and I'm trying to sell them $1 million generator. It's not even apples to apples, that kind of a thing. So, I think for me, I had a bad experience with your company before. With objections, the class I teach, there's like 3 big ones I talk about. There's a drawback, you can't change it. There's a misunderstanding or skepticism, which is you think something, but it's not really quite true. And then there's status quo, which is you don't think you have a problem. I don't need you. And the bad experience with your company before, that's a drawback. I can't change it. And it's true. I do have 1 strike against me. It doesn't mean I'm struck out, though. It shouldn't mean I should quit. With that kind of a drawback, you have a credibility problem. So how do you build on a credibility problem? I would look at something like social proof. I would look at something like another reference other than me, because most people don't trust salespeople. They think you're just trying to make money. So you'll say whatever you need to say. I think this is why pushing hard to get Google reviews, get Yelp reviews, to try to build your online presence matters, because one person's voice can drown out a lot. But I think with something like that, you have to be incredibly apologetic, and you have to show them why things are different than the other experience they had. What do you think, Pax?
I think where you mentioned, I've had a bad experience with your company before, that has come up in my business, but also I've had a bad experience working with a real estate agent before, or my last real estate agent did. So I think listening is always a good tactic in sales. I joked to somebody the other day that God gave you 2 ears to listen and 2 sides of your mouth to talk out of. But I think any of these objections, you want to hear the backstory. So you ask questions as to, allow them to elaborate. And then that gives you your launch pad or leaping, your ability to take off and kind of not attack. You want to be empathetic and sympathetic to the bad experience and try to rebuild that relationship and their trust.
So I use the M&M approach here from 8 Mile. And what I don't think it's us, because most people don't work with our company multiple times, especially on the sales side. On the purchase side, people will, but those people like us, so we don't really have this experience very often. But I've had a bad experience with someone in your industry, happens all the time.
All the time. And
what I mean about take the 8 Mile approach is we have several pieces of like leave behinds. flyers, types of things that we have, and we basically have what everybody else does and how we're different. So our first one of this was a New York Times article that came out on Pearl Harbor Day. It was December 7th, 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years ago. And it literally said all the people who buy your house for cash, they do these things. And then we took all those things on the back. We basically said, these are 4 things about our company that refuted the biggest 4 problems. And we used that in appointments for like 7 years. It was not having a physical office, not having a physical presence, only having a website, things along these lines. And what we would talk about is, okay, you had a bad experience with those guys, and we have a terrible reputation. We're sorry for that, but we're going to treat you differently. And how we're going to treat you differently is we're going to start with you. What is important to you? And if you get it down to those things, you can prove over and over again that you're a different person. Like Pax, people who cut rates to list houses, they're everywhere. Absolutely. But what makes you special is your ability to connect to the customer, repeat business, testimonials. Like, these are all the things that you have to have in place in order to, overcome this bad objection.
I love that. So the M&M 8 Mile approach that Frank's talking about, he's talking about the movie 8 Mile, where at the end, the final rap battle, Eminem makes fun of himself so that the competing rapper has nothing to say against him. So in law, Frank, if you're a criminal attorney, they do this all the time in their closing arguments. So they'll get up at the end of, in front of a jury at the end of the trial, and they'll say, my opponent is going to point out that the glove didn't fit OJ. And he's going to point out that, and they'll use all of the weaknesses of, your case. And they call that in law, they call that taking the sting out, which I like. And I love that you went as far as giving your sales team, a document. Like, we're so confident that other people do the things you're talking about, we're not afraid to even tell you about them, and we don't do those things. I think the other piece of it too, Pax, that you said, which is really important, and I think we'll repeat this with a number of these, is just listen. So, okay, I'm sorry to hear you had a bad experience. Can you tell me all about it? And then listen, and then keep asking, and then so maybe repeat it. So yeah, and then your company, I couldn't get anyone to return a call, and I kept getting stuck, in people's voicemails, and it was a different person I talked to. And so you listen, and then you say, okay, it sounds to me like responsiveness and access is very important to you in a process. Is that correct? So you respond, you kind of summarize why they didn't like the experience, and then you tell them why it's going to be different in working with you. Well, here's my personal cell phone. Here's my number at home. I want you to know that won't happen working with me. So summarize, listen, summarize, and then show them some proof. Frankie's got proof in that he built a marketing guide. Yeah. This is what I would do.
I think those are all great points.
What about sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I have so there's almost like a standard of set questions that people either print off from the internet or something to ask a real estate agent. And I kind of, through trial and error and a lot of appointments, I've learned what those, core questions are. And I try to address them kind of in an opening remarks. When I moved from charging 7% and 6% to charging 4.5%, it was introduced to me and it was against my original line of thought. So I had skepticism naturally. And so I go through and I speak to those. And I said, when this was brought to me, I thought, that can't be done. What will happen? How will I provide service? Can I do the same amount of marketing? And I know that those are a lot of people's initial questions. So I just try to address those head on, M&M style. And I've kind of I've almost taken their questions out of their hands just by I've even had them say, oh, well, it looks like you've answered all of these already. And that's just kind of anticipating, sometimes thinking like the customer and the consumer is a great weapon. And you do that from practice and years in the business like you guys have. And then also from listening over time.
So what about, I already have someone else I buy from. So I already have a favorite realtor. I already have a company who I've been talking to before Cava reached out to me.
Yeah.
right? All of those. How do you handle those?
I think it's like Frank mentioned, where's the lead from? Is this somebody that sought us out, or did we cold call them? But if they sought us out, there's a reason that they're kind of nosing around or looking. So I just say, hey, I would not want to step on the business of someone else's toes, but there is a reason that you had the meeting. Is there something that more that you're looking for?
I love that. I love that line. You took it right out of my mouth. Why are we talking? Like, that's great. You have someone else, but there's a reason you reached out to me, or there's a reason we're talking today. And especially if I didn't just interrupt you over dinner. If it's some referral, some reason we're talking, well, there's got to be something missing from that relationship. If you and I are talking today, what about that relationship do you like? And what about that relationship do you wish was a little bit different, or product, feature, whatever it is? You're trying to get to why we're talking today. How about you, Frankie?
Same exact thing. Like literally we talk about, okay, you've got a realtor, you've got a friend, you have a different person who's going to buy it. I mean, no offense, but why are you talking to me? Why don't you take that deal?
Yeah.
And I think the really important thing about selling. So the worst part about selling is you can't control the process. Like you just can't. Like, so commission sales, which is basically every type of sales that's actually lucrative. There's a saying, you go from a hero to a zero on the first of every month, because you have to start over. And you can do everything right in a sales process and you can still lose. It's part of sales. And there's always a competitor no matter what you're selling. So what you have to really kind of get to is, okay, I could do everything right and I could lose. But if I'm going to give myself the best possible chance, I can hide behind problems or I can just deal with them. And that's what an objection is. You just take a problem head on and you deal with it. So that's a question like, hey, no disrespect. Like if you've got somebody else, why is your house not sold? Why haven't you done this? Why aren't you closed? Like based on what I'm looking at, you've got like $85,000 in equity. Why are you sitting here if you have that? Like you got to be very careful about how you pick and choose what to say. But you need to say the thing that leads to believe like, okay, this is really bullshit, and you just want to kind of talk about it, but you don't really have a solution to your problems, do you? Now, the worst thing about sales is you go from a hero to a zero in the course of a month. The best thing about sales is you can control the process with other people's words. If you do it right, you can control everything that happens because they give you the ammunition.
Yeah.
And what I realize is you have to get to the period where you get them to put down their guard. And when their guard is down, you need to exhaust them with questions. Do not stop asking questions until you get every single thing out of them. And most people, somewhere between 4 and 16. But if you jot all of those things down at every single point where you have a misunderstanding, you have an objection, you have anything, apathy, you're going to know what those things are based upon the questions that you ask.
So out of those two, if we have to choose the one that's harder, I'll go first. I would say I would rather face, I had a bad experience with your company or industry before, than I already have someone else I buy from. And the reason is it's much easier to keep someone moving along a path when they've already made a decision. So they chose me once before, we didn't do a great job, but they chose me for a reason. Those reasons are all still there. So I could ask you, why did you go with us in the first place? I can ask a lot of questions around, well, I do like this feature, I do like that, versus status quo, which is I'm already cool somewhere else. That's harder to get someone to change and do something different than to just keep doing what they're doing. What do you think, Jeff?
I think that's true. I think you can use their statement of I had a bad experience to personally improve, and then also make it some people say an objection, but then I've heard other people say an opportunity. And I feel like that I had a bad experience with your company before is an opportunity to really, really improve. People like second chances. People like to give a second chance. And if you can shine through that, I think it gives you a lot of credibility. I already have someone else I buy from is almost your best chance is if that person falters. You know, if you almost have to have someone on the other team do something wrong to win, where I feel like.
And most experienced salespeople are going to dig a little and then move on. Like,
Yeah.
that customer is being helpful to me. They're not stringing me along to check prices on the person they buy from. They're just telling me that, so I can move on to someone who's more interested and open to engaging with someone.
I've said Peyton Manning was the quarterback in Indianapolis for a long time. And actually, I've become friends with this guy, Jim Sorgi, who was Peyton Manning's backup for a number of years. And he and I were at a NCAA draft last night. But he said, I've told people a lot, like, hey, it sounds like you've got somebody. I'm glad you're being taken care of. I'd love to be your Jim Sorgi if something happens to Peyton Manning. So I just, I leave it to.
I love that.
I leave it to, hey, here's where I am. Sounds like you got a quarterback, but if you ever need a second opinion, let me know.
In my line of work, these things are virtually the same. I've had a bad experience. I have somebody else. If you're not under contract, why the hell are we talking? It's the same thing. So like if you're a realtor and they have a cousin who's a realtor and they've bought and sold 5 houses with them, they're probably not going to put Jim Sorgi in the game. But in my line of work, it's different. These are both the same thing. They're the same. And how you handle it is you redirect the customer, you talk about what's important to them, and you add value. And you do so better than somebody else. You prioritize the customer. I had bad experiences that moves on because I think we like that one more. It's always easier to have a second chance.
One more, and I promise I'll keep this short, boys. But in tying into a music theme that we had earlier, Tom Petty in late 70s or early 80s was the opening act for Bruce Springsteen. And he was out on stage and he was playing opening act. And he left the stage frustrated, and the people backstage said, "Why are you what's going on? Why'd you leave stage?" And he said, "They're booing me." And they said, no, they're not booing you. They're saying, "Bruce, Bruce, Bruce." And he said, "What's the difference?" And I think that's kind of
I love that.
What's the difference between?
It's almost worse. It's almost worse.
Yeah. It's like, well, you've already worked with somebody else, so what am I here for? But I'll keep it short from there. I had a bad experience with your company and moves on in this particular bracket.
Yep. 3 versus 4 seeds. So the number 3 seed is, I don't like a particular feature of your product. And number 4 seed is, can you just call me back next quarter, year, month, wherever. That's a kick the can down the road. So I'll start with the call me back next month, quarter, year. I think a great follow-up question to that is, what's going to change? Why bother calling you in a month or a quarter or a year? Like, do I really need to call you? I mean, are you even interested? What's going to change in a month or a quarter? What's going to be so different? I like to ask that open-ended question just to make them talk. What about you guys on the blow off, call me back later?
Questions are always great. So I like that. Find out, what their motivation is. And like I always think that just as a technique, if they say, call me back in a month, I would definitely do 3 weeks or 2 weeks. I think they're sometimes on the edge of making a decision. There's a reason they walked into the open house. There's a reason they may not be as nonchalant as they say. So I think just kind of finding a way to stay in front of them. And I think they think they're pushing the salesman out the door when they say that. So I think the next time you approach it should be less of a sales way. It should be, more natural perhaps, or like, "Oh, funny seeing you here." Sometimes that, I think if they see you in a different setting, that can open up doors that you didn't have before.
What about you, Frankie, on call me back later? I'm sure your sales guys get that all the time.
Yeah, so it's one of two things for us, right? It's like, now's a bad time, or my wife's out of town, so I can't do it because of that, right? So both, I don't like this feature of your product isn't really something we have, right? In my line of work, buying houses at a discount, if you don't like my product, you're calling a realtor. You're going to wait, you're going to list your house, you're going to do the normal process. So you don't call me if you're going to call a realtor. So it doesn't really apply. But a lack of urgency or apathy is call me back later. My wife isn't here to help me make the decision, comes up all the time. So what you need to do in these situations is you need to ask the question, and it comes down to how do we find you in the first place? If we're cold calling you and you tell me this, I would ask, what's the harm in having a further conversation with us to just see what's available? Like, I don't know if you're looking at the news, but have you noticed that 5 banks have had runs on them in the last week? If you're thinking of selling, now's a really good time to have a conversation about the home. You don't have to sell it, but there's a very good chance I'm going to be able to pay you more today than I am in a week based upon what's happened in the last week. So would you rather wait a month, or I'm usually in and out in under an hour? Would you like to find an hour for us to sit down? That's how we'd overcome getting in the living room. Once we get in the living room, what's that?
I think with you, the feature, because you don't have a product, the feature would be, I don't like this aspect of your process.
Sure.
I think that would be more that, like,
We
like
that's
the
what I would
realtor, staying put, or I don't know if I like this. You call me and you send me cash and I got to get out real quick, or they could find some feature of the process that they nitpick at. Right.
They don't. That never happens. But what they do say is, I'm just going to stay put. I'm going to do nothing.
Yeah.
Like that's we deal with that a ton more than if they don't like our process, they don't answer, or they do what I do. They hand their phone to their 4-year-old son and he talks to them. Like that's how I deal with cold callers who want to buy my stuff. So, but on the other side of it, if they're a warm lead and they call us and then they stall, that's way easier. So you got to know where you're starting in this process and how hard you can actually push. Like I'll give you an example. If we cold call you and we turn you into a lead, our conversion is 4%. And getting you from a cold call to a lead probably is a factor. We probably shed 1 out of 1,000. So like it needle in a haystack. But if you called us and you become a lead, it's about 20%, 25% we can close you. So it really, really matters where you come from in the funnel.
Yeah.
So
if I hear I don't like a feature, Ian, it's sometimes like I just said something about open houses, but I've not done an open house in probably 14 or 15 years. And so I'll run into people that say, well, we want somebody that will do open houses. So I just kind of explained how the modern real estate world is now. Maybe they haven't sold a home in a long time. I told them, I try to tell relatable stories. I've had other people that have thought the same thing.
The biggest objection I would ask you, Jeff, is this. Why would my home is my #1 largest investment.
Yes.
Why would I hire someone who will do it at a discount? Wouldn't I want to hire somebody who's going to charge me a full 6%? Am I going to get a better quality product?
Well, Frank, I don't feel like I'm working for less. This is what I wake up to every day and agree to. I'm charging you as much as I'm going to charge anybody. And I don't feel like I'm doing you a favor. I don't feel like I'm doing anything for charity. This is a good living for me, and your home's important to me. I just hope that you'll tell your friends about me and the success that we've had.
So
I think with both these objections, I'm ready to weigh in on it. Because you guys don't run into the features much, but I don't like a feature of your product. I didn't buy the first 6 iPhones because I liked the keyboard on the BlackBerry. I was old school. I didn't want to I didn't get it.
I was with you on that, by the way.
But honestly,
I went Droid. I went BlackBerry, then Droid.
But Frankie, until I bought an iPad and I was like, this is awesome. That's when I was like, I'm buying the iPhone. But I wish someone would have sold me. I wish someone would have said, okay, I hear you. That's a drawback to ours. We don't have a keyboard, but let me show you all the other things that this thing does. I wish someone would have done that, because I would have got an iPhone way earlier, because the BlackBerry kind of sucked anyway. There was a lot it couldn't do that was frustrating. So if I have to choose the harder of these two, I'm taking call me back next month, quarter, all day. I think I don't like this feature is a buying question. Call me back later is a blow off question. I like buying questions. I don't like this feature. Okay, let's talk about it. What features do you like? right? Because we're talking here, what features? So why are we talking? Okay, well, I like the apps on the iPhone. You got a better battery. You got blah, 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 blah. What do you like? Okay. And then I'm going to try to outweigh that one feature that I can't change. I'm going to try to outweigh it with a lot of positives, but you're at least interested if you're telling me you don't like something. When someone tells me they don't like a feature of my product, they're interested. So even if I'm selling car alarms, Frankie, if someone says, I don't like that it goes in the cup holder. Okay, I get it. So I could see where, you'd want to put more things in there. Let me tell you what got you to our website. Why have you had your car broken into? Yeah, it's awful. Okay, yeah, I hear you. And I just get to talking, but I'll like that all day than someone who just looks at our website and moves on. That's kind of a blow off. So for
Why the
me,
hell would I get a car alarm?
that's right. Why are we kind of talking in the first place? So
Yeah.
Before we move off this, Pax, so something about your business that would appeal to me if you were selling to me is this. I would like to hear that I'm not getting a lack of service or you're looking for a referral, but what you've done is you've streamlined the process and you cut out a lot of the waste. And because I get most of my customers from word of mouth, because I do such a great job, I don't spend as much money on marketing, so I don't charge you that.
Wonderful way to say it.
I think you were saying something similar, but I didn't hear that, where hey, that makes sense to me. Like, because my friend referred him, he'll do it for less because he's not paying for that. But I do such a great job. I save you money and you're going to talk to people. And that's why I'm one of the biggest realtors in the entire state, is because I do it that way. But I pass that savings on to you and I just ask you as a return. You just tell somebody about me.
Sure. Yeah, that's great way to say it. Thanks, Frank.
All right.
we're going to the South bracket, boys. We're looking at the 2 versus the 3 seed right now. So the 3 seed is the timing's just bad for me right now. And the 2 seed is I'm happy with my current situation. So a little bit different. One, the timing is bad. These sound similar, but they're not. The timing is bad is saying I would like to change, but I can't right now. I'm happy with my current solution is saying I don't feel the need to change or ever buy that. They're 2 different things. So when you hear the timing is bad, Jeff, which I'm sure you hear all the time, stock market's up, stock market's down,
all the time.
Interest rates are up, interest rates are down, sales prices are too high, sales prices are too, like there's always something someone's reading
Always something
telling you, I don't think the timing's good. How do you handle it?
I said when I was mid-20s, late 20s, the conversation of having children was coming up. And so Annie said to me, Jeff, you're always going to have a reason that it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect timing. You can always say, well, wait, what if we waited till next year? We might have more money. What if we waited till next year? We might have this paid down. What if we wait until next year? What if we wait? And I think there's never going to be a perfect time. I think what you need to do is kind of sit and talk with me or talk amongst yourselves about what does make this time good, and what will, like you said in an earlier comment, what is going to change in the future. I think you just want to, I try to be relatable and make their objections or their questions that they have to make them not feel alone. I try to give them a relatable experience of, oh, tell me about it. If you came to me in my house right now, it would not be picked up and ready to show and sell. And we have 25 things going at once at our house, but I do know that we're always a day away from having it tidy and ready to go. And I think it's just a matter of if we dedicate to that and if we prioritize it. So let's talk about what your priorities are about having the home sold, and let's see how that weighs to the timing, et cetera. Nobody wants to move. They like the idea of getting a different house, but moving is always a pain. So you want to make them understand that other people think the same way as you. You're not alone. There's never going to be an absolute perfect time, but what makes this a good decision for your family right now? And focus on that.
Frankie, what do you think about timing is bad? The timing is bad right now.
Every one of these questions boils down to a very simple question that every one of these objections boils down to one very simple process. You must ask for permission to ask why. And that's it. And you just need to listen. Like timing, I'm happy with my current situation. Tell me about both of those 2 things. Why? Why is the timing bad? What's the issue with the timing? What like this is not complicated at all. You
Yep.
need to seek to understand both instances, and if you seek to understand, then you can know where you go forward.
I think what you're saying is great. I mean, the first thing that pops in my head when I see the timing is bad is if you were to say that to me right now, Frank, I'd want to know why. So if you're
Mhm.
buying a house, why is the timing bad? Well, I got a new boss and I'm kind of on thin ice with him right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to have a job, or timing is bad because I think interest rates are going to go down. I don't know how to solve it until I understand why you think the timing is bad, and I think that's where you have to, because the solution is going to be different for different answers
That's
of
right.
why you tell me the timing is bad. If someone tells me the timing's bad right now to buy a $300 car alarm, I would say, okay, well, tell me why. And they say, well, I just spent a bunch of money and I'm kind of low in my account. Do you know
My
what?
car just got stolen.
Well, or the timing is bad. It just could be money. And if it's money, okay, well, do you know we offer a five payment plan, that make it a little bit easier if it's a little lower in there. But has anything changed? Is your car still dangerous? Yeah. So the timing is still pretty good to protect your car. Yes. It's not good to pay for it. So you want to ask questions. And I'm happy with the current solution. Again, that's a blow off. So if they came to me, then why are we talking? If you're happy, why'd you obviously here for I want to know if you're lying about that. You're happy with the current solution. Why are we talking? And if you really are happy with your current solution, thank you. Thank you for telling me that and not making me spend, 2 weeks taking you around and showing you houses. I'd rather
Yeah.
not do that if you're not serious in the first place. So I would say the tougher of the two that is going to lead to less sales is I'm happy with the status quo current solution, because if they're right, if that's true, now I'm trying to push a rope instead of pull on it. Whereas the timing is bad, what you're really saying to me is I have a problem. I actually like you or your company, but something's keeping me from doing it now. That's way ahead of I'm happy with my current solution, which is not telling me I have a problem. So I would vote for number timing is bad. Or I would vote for I'm happy with my current solution as a tougher
It's
objection.
harder. It's hard to overcome. The other person has made an admission that they want the product. It's just not now. Where the I'm happy with my current solution is complete and total apathy.
Okay, so 1 versus 4. 1, we don't have the budget, which is kind of a business way of saying I don't have the money right now. Versus 4, which is I don't want to be locked into a commitment, or a contract or whatever. They're afraid of commitment. They're afraid of committing to something. So Jeff, how do you handle the budget? I don't have the money.
So we don't have the budget. This is one of my go-to turn down for what's if somebody reaches out to my office for to invest in something or to try something new or to spend money, I'm local real estate agent, so I could sponsor every little league team in town if they had their druthers. So I feel like we don't have the budget is a good objection that is hard to overcome, because I know you guys like Seinfeld, and then there's the Larry David show, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Well, he has a spot in the show where he talks about if you say it's personal, they're not allowed to ask you a follow-up question. That's kind of his quip, like, hey, I'm missing work today. It's personal. It paralyzes people. And I think when you speak to, I don't have the money, we don't have the budget, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. You almost embarrass the person. You kind of put them on the spot by saying like, I would, but I don't have the money. Then they're like, oh, we're so sorry, sir. Have a good day. And I feel like they don't ask you many more questions after you allude to that.
So
that's
we deal with this in my line of work quite a bit.
I bet.
And it's not that we don't have the budget, it's we can't afford to move, or we want to go somewhere we just can't. And it's really, you have to, I think what you said is a funny way of saying you've gotten into the land of personal and you need to be very respectful to the person or you'll quickly turn them off.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone brings up to you, we don't have the budget, there's still a need, there's still a want, there's still a desire, but they don't have the ability to problem solve the problem the way that you do. So I'll go into a different line of work when I used to sell new homes. And what I used to talk about, basically, we had a quota, and our quota was somewhere between 2 and 3. It was 2, 2.5, 3. And I used to always joke that there was 3 sales a month if you did the following. If you're just on time to your model, someone would come in. If you worked your cards and just called the people in your CRM, you get a second sale. And then my third sale always came from the fact that I figured out how to make people's money stretch further. I work with different lenders, and I had different ways of solving problems financially so people could afford more house if they were willing to take a little bit more risk. And that's how we got them to qualify to a house that maybe they didn't think they could afford. And back then, these are like $600,000-$700,000 houses. And it was like, I can't afford a $600,000 house. I'm like, okay, but do you like the house? I love the house, but I have a $400,000 budget. Okay, let's talk about some of those things. And so what you do is you kind of get away from it, or you solve the problem. In my current line of work, with people say we don't have the money for that, we're like, well, how do you solve that problem? And what I've learned with people that we deal with is people do typically have equity in their house, and they have a several $1,000s problem. And what they do is they swing a sledgehammer at a thumbtack problem. So we show them is, don't overspend your money. You have more than you would really need. There's an advance. There's other ways we can do things, but it all comes down to having the conversation. Being locked into a contract is different. Like that's a service that I don't want to have the continuity or the monthly fee. And honestly, I just don't deal with that.
But with we don't have the budget, regardless of whether you're selling a $200,000 house or a $300 product. What you're really saying is, I don't see this as valuable enough to spend my money on versus other things, right? My money's limited, and I'm spending my money in other areas. And so you haven't got them to feel pain enough. You haven't got them to admit that the problem is big enough, and they haven't talked through it enough to be able to explain it. I don't want to be locked into a contract. That's similar in that you're saying, I don't know if I'm committed. I don't know. I feel like someone who's saying they don't want to be locked into a contract, they're saying they like the product. They're saying they like the features. They're saying that they actually think you could probably solve some problems that they have, but they're afraid of commitment, and I think that's almost saying, I don't see value. Right. So now you're talking about price. Is it price? Do you feel like we're overpriced? Do you feel like, it's too expensive to do this? It's no different than, people that say they don't want satellite radio, and then they buy a new car and it comes with it for free for a month. And then when they lose it, they pay for it because now they've seen the value, and now they don't mind being locked into a contract if indeed it gives me satellite radio. So I would go ahead.
I've told people in this, like, they don't want to commit to me. And so then I've learned to kind of turn it around and said, and I do it sometimes in a jokey way, but sometimes dead serious. Like, I'll say, well, I understand, and I haven't decided if I want to work with you yet. Or, I kind of turn it back to, I put them maybe a little bit on the defense that because they're using words like locked and contract. Those are scary words. So I think you can change words to contract. You can change the paperwork. Let's go over the paperwork.
I like that.
I don't want to, this is a contract. No, let's just, you and I getting to know each other. We both have the mutual right to decide if we want to work together or not. I'd rather you get to know me better before either one of us make a big decision.
So I think of the two, I think you're right. I think I don't want to be locked into a contract. You can change your language a little. You can ask a few questions. That's a feature that you have to overcome, but they're at least agreeing that a number of other things. We don't have the budget could be true. They could literally be flat broke, and you're wasting your time with somebody who can't afford it, nor should they buy your product because they've got financial issues. That one to me is a harder objection to overcome. So I would say we don't have the budget is harder than I don't want to be locked into a contract, which can be overcome with a few extra questions. I would say I don't want to be locked into a contract. They are much closer to buying than we don't have the budget.
Amen.
All right, moving over to the Midwest bracket.
Midwest.
The one seed in the Midwest bracket is I have to run this by the boss or a committee or my husband or my wife. I got to run it by someone else. They're saying I'm not the decision maker. And the 4 seed is similar to the other one, that they didn't like a feature. This is your product service lacks a feature that I want. You lack something. You can't give me something that someone else can, that I wish you had. So this would be, I want to be able to lock my interest rate online. You don't offer that ability. The big banks do. I have to call some loan officer. That's something we dealt with at MVR Mortgage. You were lacking something that one of your competitors could offer. So
Shocking, something that technology was causing you to be behind.
it was more profitable. That's why we didn't give you that ability.
That's it.
I have to run this by the boss or the committee or my spouse or my partner. I think what you do then is, again, ask questions. What would your boss like about this? What does your boss like? And then you want to almost see, because now you're asking that person to be your salesperson. So you want to make sure that they can sell it to you and repeat. So tell me what your boss would like. Oh, okay. What have I talked to you about that he would really like there? You know? And I think just asking questions, getting deep, making sure that they can almost regurgitate or present your product or service back to you. And that's their script or dialogue to share with somebody else, or you ask for the next meeting.
What I want to know there, I love that. What I want to know there is, how do you plan to run this by the boss?
Yeah.
Are you, again, are you blowing me off so you can tell me they didn't like it? Are you going to sell the boss? Are you planning, is your recommendation that you should do this when you talk to your boss? Yes, absolutely. Great. So tell me, how does your manager make decisions? What do they typically look for in this? How can I help you win that order? How can I help you overcome that? Would it help me I can come over and meet with your husband and we can talk about it, or can I give you some information to share? I want to kind of know how that process goes, but I also need to know, are you approaching them on my side, or are you Switzerland? Are you neutral? I want to know. Because if you're Switzerland or you're negative, what the hell am I bothering? I need to sell you longer if that's the case.
So I don't think there's really much to add. I'll say 2 things quickly. I have to run this by the boss. You do exactly what Ian said. You figure out, like, where are you on this? I hate your service. Well, why are you running it by the boss? Why do you hate my service? Deal with that before you deal with something else. Your product lacks a feature that I want. That requires probing, understanding it. Usually it's a misunderstanding. Oh, you didn't know we do this too. Or in Ian's case, I'm guessing what NVR Mortgage used to say was, this way better. Things shut down. There's less options. If you have a human being on the other end of the phone, it's very easy to get in touch with us. We can quickly do this and customize it to your needs. There's ways to spin it and turn it into a positive for the person. But all this backs into the first part of this we talked about, which is prioritize the customer and ask questions. So which one do we think is harder? I have to run this by the boss?
I have to run it by the boss is harder, I believe, because you lose control in that instance for a second.
Lacking a feature says that you like a lot of the other features. It also tells me you have a problem, and it tells you that you're going to solve it with somebody.
I'm gonna buy something.
Me or not, so I at least know you're a serious buyer. I have to run it by the boss. I'm not sure if you're serious, and I don't know your intention. So I would say that's harder. So the 3 seed, your fees are too high, versus the number 2 seed. I've read some bad things online about your company. And Frank and Jeff are no stranger to that last one I just said. I've Googled both of you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
go ahead, Frank, please.
So Ian, why don't you start with your fees are too high, and then Jeff and I will debate number 2.
So with your fees are too high, I will thank them for sharing how they feel, because that's better than them keeping that to themselves. I appreciate you saying that. What kind of fees were you anticipating? And what are you comparing those fees to? And am I being compared to some online small company? Is my $300 car alarm being compared to a tiny little dashboard cam that has half the features? What exactly am I being compared to? Are you making an apples to apples comparison? And then I'm going to get back into value. Like, you've already told me your car's been broken into twice. How much does that cost you? I mean, are you sleeping at night? What are we talking about here for $300? So I want to know, if you think I'm still too expensive, you're telling me that the problem's not big enough, or something else is wrong, or you've seen something that deliberately makes us look expensive versus that. And so I need to understand more, what's the comparison? And two, do you see value in what I'm trying to offer you?
I read bad things about your company. I think it's pretty easy. There's a lot of good things about our company too. So look, we're not perfect. We make tons of mistakes. What did you read? Yeah, we fucked that one up. Like, that's how we handle the bad reviews. Like, we've got a ton of great reviews, and we've got a couple of bad ones. Like on the Better Business Bureau, we get bad reviews because we mail people postcards, and they get mad at us and they give us this 1 or 0 stars because we mail you postcards. But what we reply to is this: we're very sorry that our postcard drove you to act in a way that you had to file a complaint. You couldn't just throw the trash at the rest of us.
Yeah.
But we have replied as soon as we were made aware. We replied quickly. We respect your decision, and we've taken you off of our list. We're so sorry for the inconvenience. You just deal with it straight up. Like, if you're doing things the right way, by and large, like if you look at this podcast, we have 167 5-star reviews and 1. Like, I have no idea how we've managed to piss somebody off. Fine. Like that's how it works. You can't please everybody, and you just deal with that place by place. But you also put the person who's complaining back in the spotlight.
My favorite review, by the way, the guy that said that was just a bunch of self-serving drivel. I don't know how it's self-serving. All we've done is lose money on this podcast. So I'm still trying to figure out where the self-serving part of it came.
I think his name is Jersey One. I still remember his name.
Neither of us have had anything good come out of this podcast, but yet somehow someone got pissed and said it was self-serving.
I thank them for telling me about bad things that they've read. Let's say there was something bad written about me online. I can't relate, but in this case, maybe. And I say, I appreciate you telling me, and I know that was probably difficult for you to share.
Love that line. That's awesome.
So thank you. And I am sorry that you read it.
That's
But
a
I've
great
also
line.
found that most things that are written online are the negative experience. And I would like the chance to show you how I really work. And you can read bad things about Disney World. You can read bad things about many places that do really well. I promise that I've probably read each of those good and bad opinions online, and I've grown from it, or I know the circumstance to be.
So which one's harder here, guys? Which
No, I'm not moving on yet. I think what both of you were saying, this is important. When someone takes 1 or 2 things out of context, I think it's helpful to show context. So for you, Jeff,
Sure.
You know, what do you do? How many sales a year do you do?
The most common online
how many
reviews
do you do?
negative
300?
about me are from the other realtor's client. And so I point that out to, I say, listen, they weren't on my team. I can imagine they didn't like how firm we were in negotiation. I can imagine they didn't like that they didn't get the answer that they wanted from the client that I represented, but
I think numbers help both of you.
volume is.
So how much do you do a year? 300 sales?
I've done that many before. Yeah, 150.
Paxson team. So if you said something like, well, listen, in the last 10 years, we've helped over 3,000 people get into a home, 3,000 sales. I have a team of 7 people. I've been in this market for 22 years. I can assure you, we would not be doing that kind of level of success. The majority of my sales come from referrals. If we treated everybody like the 1 or 2 things you read online, most of those 3,000 people don't go online and write anything, and they're very happy and they refer the next person over to us. I like giving context. Someone who says that is so focused on these little outliers. It's important to go get big picture and say, I wouldn't still be in business if I treated everyone like that and I didn't care about people.
Yeah, great way to say it.
All my business is referrals. So I think that is an easier thing to deal with the online than if your fees are too high. Some people, look at, you get, some buyers are going to buy on price no matter what, and they just
That
lock
seems
in.
like the decision's more than made up on your fees are too high.
I think so. So let's go down to the West bracket. Can you just send me more information? Versus a very direct, I don't think your service, product, company solves my problem. So what do you get? Frankie, your people must get, can you just email me some information of how you guys work?
Mhm.
I'm sure you get that.
Not very much. Like neither of these really reply to us.
No, I
yeah,
get asked, send me
it's-
some houses, I
Why
think
are you bothering me? We get more than both of these.
I compare it to your, one of your podcasts where you talk about how do you follow up after the interview. And at the end of the day, it's like, don't send the thank you letter, do a good job.
Win the interview.
And I think, can I send you more information, or can you send me more information? They don't really want that. They want you to do a good job.
It's
And
like
so I think
it's like
that's what-
Tupperware. Why take something home and not eat it later if you're not going to eat it now? You know what I
Correct.
mean? It's like it's the
Yeah,
same
great.
thing.
Why kick it out? So
But it's no different than the person that comes to the model home, walks around for a while, and you try to get an appointment set, and they're like, can you just give me a brochure for this community? You had that happen. I'll guarantee you had that. I've done that to people. Can you just give me a
Of course.
brochure? It's a blow off. I'm not going to
really
buy it.
interested.
I'm really interested. Give me a brochure, right? I had that all the time at GE. People would ask for a marketing flyer or a brochure. Never once got a call back on anything, and ours
I
looked
think
great.
I think you have to just sort through quickly and say, can you just send me more information? Like, are you interested or are you not? Let's come to terms with that pretty quickly. And nowadays I'm humane. I walk into someone's mom, I'm like, I'm not here to buy, I just want to see your decorations. You don't have to get up. Like, I'm not moving. I'm not moving in this house. So you could do it that way. I don't think your service solves my problem. It's probably easier to solve because you have a real person, right? You have a person who's admitting they have a problem, and they just don't think your service is right, which takes us from objection to misunderstanding. And a misunderstanding is along in the process where now we can dive into something.
Well, I think on the second one, Frankie, to what you're saying, you're admitting you have a problem.
Right.
And that is 80% of the challenge in sales is
Yep.
getting someone to admit they have a problem, how deep the problem is, why the problem is there, how much it costs. Now you admitted all that. Now I've got to convince you I can solve it. And if you don't think, then that's skepticism. That's all that is skepticism. And skepticism, you go right back to social proof, online reviews, other evidence, objective information, data. That's where Paxson can talk about his volume, all of that. I think that's easier to overcome than, can you just send me more information? That's kind of status quo blow off. What do you think, Pax?
I agree. I think easier to overcome.
Okay, what about a much more direct, the next two? My wife isn't convinced, right? My manager isn't convinced. We're not in agreement that this is a good idea. Versus, and this is similar to one we've already done. Now's not the right time for me.
I think you just have to ask questions. What's important to this? What's important about this to you? Really on both of those, the 2 and the 3 seed, it doesn't feel like the right time, or my other person isn't convinced. So you want to remind them and get deep with them. Like, well, what's important about buying a home right now to you? Or what's important about buying a home? And then, well, we'd like to have a place where our kids can grow up and go to high school. Okay. What's important about that? Well, I just would like to have the kids over in our basement. I'd like to have the house where the people hang out. Well, what's important about that? Well, I just feel like if the kids are here, they're kind of, under our thumb. And, okay. What's important about that? Well, I feel if they are doing good things and around good people that have a better chance to go to college, what's important about that? Well, I want them to move out of the house someday and go to college and
I
you know,
love
be
that.
able to support themselves. So you just get deep with what's important, what's important, what's important.
Everything you're talking about, it's they call that the social penetration theory, that people don't like to share how they really feel, so they just give you basic data, like boring answers, boring information. And the way you're doing that, those are all open-ended questions. What's important about that? You can't answer that with a one-word question, yes or no, or blue or yellow. I have to expand, and the more you ask that, the more, like, a lot of times people don't even know they're objecting because people don't go to objection school. They don't learn how to object to a salesperson.
Yeah.
So they just put up their gloves. But by you asking those questions, they haven't even thought about why they objected, right? It's kind of like when you go into, Frankie does a nice job when he goes into a model and says, don't waste your time, I'm just looking around. But I do that shit. I'll go to Home Depot and I'm looking for Christmas lights, and someone walks up nicely to help me, and I'll say, I'm just looking. And then I walk around the Home Depot for a while and then come back to that person. I'm like, actually, I'm looking for Christmas lights. Right? I don't even know why I objected. It just works that way. So I think by you asking why is that important over and over, you're trying to peel the onion. You want to get to the stinky part of the onion, and you got to get to the stinky part of the onion, you got to peel all the layers off, and you do that with that open-ended question. So I feel like if I had to choose between which one was harder, it doesn't feel like the right time to buy, or my manager or wife isn't convinced, I would say manager wife isn't convinced is harder.
Way harder.
Way harder.
Because I feel like that could be true or not true, and you're just using it, but doesn't feel like the right time to buy means there is a right time, and I do like your product, and I do have a problem.
Yep.
So here's the good news about 3 hosts. You guys could do this without me. I've got a 1 o'clock and I'm late.
Hey, Frank, love you, buddy.
So you guys take it home. See ya.
So we got Paxson. We've got now our Elite 8 right now. So we're going to drive home. Let's just stay
I can't
on.
believe we couldn't get Frank to overcome that objection of leaving at 1 o'clock. I can't believe.
Frank's not even busy. You know what Frank's doing? It's 1 o'clock. He's going to get food. He's going to get sandwiches. That's what he's doing. So can you send me more information, or my husband/wife isn't convinced?
Yeah.
Which one's harder?
Boy, I like to deal with the alpha if I can. So I think you're at a big disadvantage when it's they're saying, hey, I don't even make the decision.
But listen, so we're trying to get a sale here. So these are 2 objections. Can you just send me more information, blow off, versus my husband, wife isn't convinced? That's at least telling me I'm sort of convinced.
I'm halfway in. Yeah. Sometimes I think
closer. I could at least, I know how to address that better than send me more information.
Yeah, that's true.
Can I talk
definitely go back through your sales cycle, your sales
Can I
process.
talk to your husband? Are you on board? Is it just him that's not on board? Is this the 2 of you disagreeing? So if I had to choose, I'm always going to choose with the known objection versus the unknown, which is the blow off of, can you send me more information?
Yeah, I think that's a tougher objection. So I think the 1 seed wins out there.
Yeah, so we're going to say, can you send me more information is harder. We got ourselves someone in the final 4. Now, back up to the Midwest. I have to run this by the boss, similar to the last one, or a committee. I have a committee if you're business to business, versus your fees are too high.
Your fees are too high, I think, is an easier obstacle to overcome. Number one, in my opinion, it feels like they've already done the math. They've already spent, at least, they're trying to justify how much it costs. I've said in housing, like, if Ian and Jenny look at a house and they give feedback that says they really like the house, but it's just too far from Ian's work. Well, why did they look at the house? They looked at the house because it had a lot of check marks going in. What I hear that feedback is that it's just too far from Ian's work. I finished that feedback with at that price. If you say, they like the size, the location, the lot, but they just don't like the price is what I feel that. So I think you've got a chance if they say your fees are too high. I think run it by the boss or run it by their spouse. Those are two tough ones.
I agree with you. I think your fees are too high. That's probably one of my favorite objections, because now you're saying everything else works but money.
Yeah.
Now we're just negotiating, which is cool. Like, okay, everything's negotiable, price of the card, everything. If I'm selling a baseball card and you start asking me about price, you like the condition of the card, you need the card, you want it, and you're set. Now we're going to make a deal here between me and you. Is it going to be $100 card or a $90 card or whatever it is? I can handle that. That's easier to solve than a committee I got to go talk to. It's part of our process. I'm stuck. So
the feel, felt, found?
Yep.
Yeah. I think that would be a good way to
share it.
So I feel, felt, found, and I'm not as well versed or studied in some of this as Frank might be, but I learned this a long time ago. Like, hey, I feel that you aren't as comfortable with the price. And I myself have felt that way before. But what I found is the service that I offer will offset what you're about. You kind of relate to them, or you do understanding by, I feel that you're telling me this. And I've felt that way before. So then you've kind of related to them. But what I've found is this will help them accomplish what they need to do.
Yeah. And you can also use it as their steps. I feel as if you're saying this, and instead of I've felt, you can also say other customers have felt that way too. And after choosing us, what they found was, so you can do, I love both of them. You can do the I've felt that, or others have felt, other customers have. And I'm happy to even give you a few of them as references if you'd like to talk to them, which is always kind of a good closer. So let's move on. So let's get to the finals here. We're in the final four.
I think, can you send me more information is the best blow off? I think, that's the best.
I think it's just the hardest objection to go through. I have to run this by the committee, still is telling me you're interested, you're on board, but now I got to go figure out how this decision is going to be made.
1 in a million. So you're telling me there's a chance.
But can you send me information? I still just don't know anything. So I hate that. So let's go back to the South bracket. The two winners were, I'm happy with my current solution versus I've had a bad experience with your company before. I think I go with the hardest being, I'm happy with my current solution all day over I had a bad experience.
Yes, I would rather. I would rather overcome the objection of I've had a bad experience with your company than I would. I'm happy with my current relationship.
Yep.
I feel like maybe we had our shot if they called the meeting. And that kind of goes in with I would rather they say timing doesn't feel right, or I don't know how to. I have had it before where I give them speeches or, like, hey, I've had a situation before where I'm not the best realtor for someone, and I've told them that. I've told my client that there's a different solution for you. I think you should try it. And I've also said, I've been I compare my job to being like a football coach. Sometimes the football coach has a really good team, but he can't win the Super Bowl with them. And a new coach comes in and he wins the Super Bowl right away. I've been the coach on the way out, and I've been the coach that wins with the new team. So I try to relate, stories to and analogies to make them soften a little bit. Because I think a lot of times what they mean by when they're happy with their current solution is they don't know how to break up with that guy or girl.
That's right.
And so sometimes you want to just, what I have to offer them is not worth the angst that they have of having that tough conversation. So I just kind of give them subtly, like little Eddie Haskell, like, well, maybe if you just told your mom this, or, you kind of give them a little bit of help them land the plane on how to have that tough conversation. If that is in fact, I've offered to let them, I said, well, would you like me to call the realtor? And they don't want that.
No.
So they get the courage to say, no, I'll tell him. Yeah, I think it's just a conversation I need to have with him. I said, okay, I'm happy to call him if you'd like, for all the reasons we've discussed. But I do think I'm happy with my current solution. Is tricky because it does count on the other party breaking up with their previous relationship.
It's
or
hard.
solution.
Yeah. If they're truly happy, then why would you want them to be unhappy?
Yeah.
A salesperson's job is to take someone who's unhappy with something and make them happy.
And I will tell you, it is really an uneasy part of my job that they'll say, well, our last realtor, they would schedule showings and the people wouldn't show up. Well, that happens to me.
Yeah.
I hate when I hear them blame the service provider for inconveniences of the industry. But I do listen for things that I can fix.
Yeah. So let's go to the last regional, Jeff. Call me back next month, quarter, year. Call me back sometime in the future, or we don't have the budget. I'm going to say for difficulty level, call me back next month, quarter, year is more of a blow off. We don't have the budget, is eminently solvable. You can always solve things with money, financing, creativity, right? You're telling me everything else is great, but the money. If I had the money, I'd be going with you right now, Ian. That's so much better than call me back next month, quarter, year. I've not done my job on call me back next month, quarter, year. I've not got you interested or uncovered shit.
Yeah, I would rather deal with the finances also as an objection than I do like this one, call me back next month, quarter, or year, more than can you just send me more information? Because this particular phrase, I feel like, is them inviting your next time that you reach out. You can say.
So then you would say, I'm happy with my current solution as a tougher objection, because now we're in the final four. You would say, I'm happy with my current solution is better than call me back next month, quarter, year. Because the second is more of the, so you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, I think I actually feel like the window's open a little bit more. I'm happy with my current solution, strangely, because I feel like they have listened to you, but you didn't do it. I feel like they called the meeting almost, and then call me back next month.
They have a solution, which means they have a problem, and it's getting solved somehow. Call me back next month, quarter, year. They might not have I'm not far. You're farther along in the sales process if you know they have a solution, because you at least know they have a problem and a solution. Call me back next month, quarter, year. You might not have a problem. You might not need a solution. I just feel like I'm farther behind in the sales process. And I feel like first part of sales process is discovery. I've not done any discovery with someone saying, call me back.
And I think as a salesperson, if a salesperson's mentality and style often is whack-a-mole, like they want it boom right now, and we're not naturally farmers, we're more of a hunter, mentality. I didn't see a deer today, where the call me next month, quarter, year, that's almost like you've got to harvest it a little bit, versus everybody likes the one where it's like, right now, and so that call me back next year. And also, can you just send me information? That is getting a sales guy, a true natural sales guy, a little bit out of his comfort level, which is like, I wanted this date to go well,
I think that's, we ended up in the same place. That's where our finals are. Our finals are the hardest objections. Call me back next month, quarter, year, and can you just send me more information? It's interesting. Both of these are status quo objections. I think you're wired the same way I am. If I'm going to get an objection, I want it to be a punch in the face. I want it to be, your fees are too high. I don't like this feature. I've read something bad about you online. I want a more direct, like the two objections that made it to our finals are passive aggressive. They're
Yeah.
passive aggressive no's. I like an assertive no, and the reason why. Here's why I'm not buying from you. You are 30% higher than if I were to buy it at Walmart or whatever.
Yeah.
That's direct. I can address with it. So you're telling me if I drop my price 30%, you'd buy right now? Well, I don't. Oh, okay. Well, then that's negotiating.
That's
The two that we both consider to be the hardest objections are more of the weasel out kind
Yeah.
of objections that you're blowing me off. You're not being direct. I would rather you just say, listen, man, I wish you guys the best. I think your car alarm's ugly as hell, and I would never put that cheesy shit in my
Right.
car. Oh man, thanks. Don't tell me to call you back later or send you more information. Just tell me you don't like the car alarm and you'll never be a buyer. You just saved me time in the future.
Longtime friend of the show, pretty famous restaurateur that you and I went to college with. I remember a time where we were trying to encourage this person to, there was a party at the house, and it was, co-ed, and we were trying to encourage him to like leave the party with us and go to the tavern. And he said, yeah, well, hold on just a second. And he just went up to go talk to this girl. And you and I weren't privy to the conversation, but I always thought he was asking for the sale, so to speak. And she just flatly turned him down. He was like, okay, I'm ready, boys. And I just always thought he wanted that kind of, well, hold on.
One more crack. Yes or no? What's up?
A turn down for what, so to speak. And yeah, he didn't want the, well, maybe, he just really wanted to go for it and ask for the sale. And
yeah,
I think as salespeople, we like direct replies because, that's why we went to work today. Like Frank mentions, every month
it's a tug of war in a fun way, right? And
yeah,
it's not fun when someone just lets go of the rope. That's what the objections we picked as the ones we hate are the ones where they refuse to pull. There's like, no, I'm not pulling that rope. It's going to give me calluses. I'm going to get up and just walk away. You want someone on the other end of the rope pulling, like, okay, let's exert ourselves. Let's see who, it's competitive. It's fun, but it's, those are objections I'll take all day over, the limp fish, polite,
yeah. And if you think about when we started this bracket, Ian, you said, Jeff, when you first started, what was it like? You and I both started talking about, we learned to like getting a no. And I feel like the two here in our finals, call me back next month and can you send me some information? Neither one are a no. And we learned as salespeople, there's so many no's before a yes, and so many at bats before you get a hit. And these are just kind of foul balls. Can you just send me more info? Or, they haven't even told you no. And so I guess what's funny is these two underdogs won the bracket.
The sales process doesn't really start until someone says no, or someone
Correct.
pushes back, or someone gives you a direct objection. So I think you and I are both just looking to save time. So, if this isn't going to work, tell us quickly, or at least get to the objection. Don't indirectly keep us hanging around a little bit. And I think new salespeople kind of like the indirect objections because they can go tell their boss. They can go tell their boss, well, I sent him a brochure, or, hey, he said, call him back next quarter. Whereas in like an experienced sales guy wouldn't even tell their boss that. They'd be like, nah, they're blowing me off. I'm done. Like you would never, but as a kid, I would go tell Bob Connors, like, hey, I don't know. I think I sent him a good brochure of package and, I'm going to call him back. I got something set next month, and he was probably thinking, yeah, you're never getting an order. Right. Like,
too bad. You're right.
2 years later, I'd be like, nah, they're not, they're fishing. They're wasting my time.
No, it's too bad. That's too bad. But that's how we all learn. Unless you listen to great shows like Let Me Speak to a Manager, that's another great way to learn. And
no doubt. And if you are in the market for real estate in Indiana, you just listen to a very honest realtor who is there to help you out with industry low fees. You can never say, so you notice how Jeff struggled with your fees are too high, because he never hears that, because he has the lowest fees in the country, 100%. Hey, Jeff, I had a blast hanging out with you today, homie. I hope you sell some real estate today.
I will. I got to go get after it. Thanks a bunch, Ian. Be good, buddy.
Yep. If you're new to our show, mash that subscribe button. And if you're a longtime listener, you've not given us a 5-star review with some choice comments, get in there and do it. Jeff, I'll talk to you later.
Hey, man.
Go Boilers.
Boiler up.